I am High Interrogator Vespera. By the authority of the Holy Ordos, I am reviewing this data file, flagged for containing unorthodox interpretations regarding the lost world of Caliban. Such unsanctioned history is the first step on the path to heresy, and it is my duty to trace that path to its source. The file is titled, The Chimeric Nature of the Great Beasts. It posits that the legendary monsters hunted by the knights of old were not a diverse bestiary but apex anomalies, unique, singular entities, a species of one, as the heretical scholar names it. The central pict capture is telling. A fractured sword, the symbol of a broken order, set against a single, chimeric body with two heads, two faces of the same terrible truth, one turning from the other. This symbolism is not lost on the Inquisition. It is the very portrait of schism. The beasts of Caliban were said to be creatures of the deepest woods, twisted and powerful. A recovered passage from the era, attributed to the master of the order, Luther, hints at a darker understanding.
The beasts are the soul of this world made manifest. To fight them is to fight the planet itself, and to kill them is to kill a part of ourselves.
The heresy here is not merely historical revisionism, it is foundational. It suggests the corruption that sundered the First Legion was not a betrayal, but an inevitability born from the very soil of their world. We will now proceed with the full excommunication of this data slate, but first, we shall dissect its claims. To know the enemy, you must first know their lies. The biosphere of old Caliban was a pyramid of death, built upon a foundation of carnivorous flora and poisonous blooms. Above this, a brutal but logical tier of life existed. Venomous insects, cave bears and raptors, all bound by the simple savage laws of the ecosystem. Kill or be killed. But at its peak, the structure shattered. Here, logic failed. The great beasts, the so-called apex predators, were an anomaly. They were not a species, but a collection of solitary, disconnected monarchs, each one a violation of natural order. A forgotten treatise by a pre-compliance Magos Biologis recorded them as such.
They are ecological singularities, each a king of a kingdom of one, obeying no law of their own unknowable whim. They do not compete. They merely are.
These were not animals. They were horrors given flesh, impossibly potent and steeped in the whispers of the Imperium. Against such living nightmares, a new hunter was required. One forged not by evolution, but by oaths, steel and sacrifice. The designation, species of one, is a lie. This is no species. It is a weapons manufacturing process of a biological nature, a heresy against the very concept of life. Observe the data picked. Our Magos Biologis attempted to apply the flawed logic of linear evolution, as depicted by the central schematic. They failed. The truth is far more profane. There is no shared taxonomy. Each beast is a bespoke instrument of terror, as different from its fellows as a sword is from a lance. They possess no mating pairs. They do not reproduce. There are no two alike. This is not a failure of our cataloguing, but a feature of their design. The Archmagos of the expedition that first encountered these things recorded his horror in the data panel.
There is no evolutionary precursor. Each beast is the first, only, and last of its kind, a singular, unrepeatable nightmare.
This spontaneous genesis defies natural law, but it does not defy purpose. The emergence of these singular horrors is not random. Their deployments correlate with strategic vulnerabilities across multiple sectors, which begs the question, what intelligence directs this living tide of abominations? The archenemy mocks the divine order of creation. This is its doctrine, writ in corrupted flesh, a chaotic collaboration of terrestrial phyla made manifest as a weapon of terror. Analyze the schematics. This is not a mere hybrid, it is an unholy synthesis. From the reptilian it draws serpentine speed and cold-blooded resilience, its glistening scales deflecting all but the most well-placed blows. From the mammalian it is gifted quadrupedal brute strength, the horns and hooves of a mindless beast driven by pure rage. And from the deepest warp-taint, the true heresy is revealed, a vile sentience, a cunning that belies its monstrous form, and secretions that burn flesh and steel alike. A scrawled note from a fallen knight's journal tells the tale. It wore the fur of the great bear, but had the scales of a rockworm. Its spittle burned through my brother's shield. The key insight is undeniable. A single great beast, aggressively fusing incompatible biological traits into one cohesive, devastating organism. Such biological blasphemy is not born of random mutation. It is a sign of deep-seated corruption. Observe this biological heresy. Nature does not engineer for war, it adapts. This calculated malevolence, this weaponized flesh, is an affront to the divine order of the galaxy. Magos Biologis analysis confirms our worst fears. Exhibit A. The barbed wing claw, a horny carapace so dense it can pierce the barded steel of a warhorse, eviscerating mount and rider. Exhibit B. The serrated jaw. Note the structure, a vile parody of a woodsman's saw. Surviving records from the knightly orders confirm this weapon could splinter the oaken shields and plate of their warriors. Exhibit C. The saber fangs. Not merely for biting, but engineered to function as living cavalry sabers, delivering devastating kinetic trauma upon impact. Each is a vile parody of righteous weaponry, a living weapon system. These recovered fragments prove the threat on old Caliban was not merely instinctual. This is a manufactured arms race written in bone and sinew. But these are just the component parts. Now we must turn our attention to the creatures that wield them. Standard kinetic munitions are an exercise in futility. Even the mass-reactive bolt shell, the pride of the early orders, shatters against this Xenos carapace. To fire upon it is to waste ammunition and prayer in equal measure. Magos Biologis analysis has confirmed the nature of this threat. The outer layer is a pliable rock hide, a living bastion with the density of stone yet the flexibility of muscle. It is a perversion of nature, bioengineered to be immune to all but the most dedicated anti-armor explosives. But to succeed in piercing this shell is to unleash a greater horror. To breach the inner layer is to trigger a corrosive defense. A torrent of hissing, highly acidic fluids erupts from the wound, melting ceramite, eating through plasteel, and turning the very air to a toxic haze. One fragmented voxlog survives. "We cracked it! We're through the shell! My gauntlet, the acid, it's eating right through the ceramite." The transmission ends there. This hostile biology is not a random mutation of the void. It is a weapon, exquisitely designed and perfectly executed. But do not mistake the weapon for the wielder. This flesh, this acid, they are merely the tools of a vast and hungry will. The forests of Caliban were a living testament to predation. Within those shadowed canopies, evolution was a weapon, and this was one of its most monstrous creations, designated Case Study 1, the Winged Terror, a grotesque fusion of reptilian and avian phyla. Its anatomy defies sane biology. Threat analysis confirms what the image suggests: extreme agility and airborne capability, but its defining trait is sheer, reptilian dominance. Its primary weapons were a saw-toothed beak and barbed wing claws. Our records from the era are explicit. One encounter note specifies it was capable of shearing a fully barded Calibanite horse in two with a single downward strike. It was a creature born of violence, for violence, a thing of jagged bone and unnatural sinew wreathed in an Empyrean glow, a clear sign of the latent psychic energy that saturated that world. The Knights of Caliban believed vanquishing such abominations was their ultimate trial. They were wrong. For all its ferocity, this winged terror was a simple beast, driven by instinct. A far greater monster was stirring in the hearts of men, a beast forged not of flesh and bone, but of pride and envy. The forests of pre-imperial Caliban were not an Eden, but a prison of unnatural life. Review Case Study 2, a specimen catalogued by the 1st Legion Gene Rights, the Calibanite Lion. This was no simple predator. Its physiology was an affront to nature, a clear sign of the warp's corrupting influence on that world. Analysis reveals a palpable aura of sickly decay surrounding the creature. Its offensive capacity was straightforward and brutal. Twin upper jaw fangs, the size and shape of cavalry sabers. Defensively, it was a fortress of living flesh. Its limbs were sheathed in shifting rock flesh plates, and its cranium was guarded by a mane of blade-like spines. The creature's final, most abhorrent trait was its use as a biological hazard. Upon suffering mortal injury, it could sever its own spines, spraying its surroundings with highly corrosive, acidic blood. To hunt such a thing was to court death. To master a world of them required something more than a man. The knights of Caliban tempered their steel and their souls against these horrors. But in the deepest, lightless wilds, a greater predator stalked the forests. One who would hunt these lions not for glory, but for survival. Case Study 3. The designation, spined bear creature, is a crude field appellation for a xenos of profane biology. Magos Biologis analysis confirms a genetic impossibility, a chimera of flesh and living stone. Primary threat analysis is unambiguous. Its primary weapons are its own brute physiology, snapping jaws and crushing, heavy paws. The picked capture demonstrates its raw power breaching a templated defense shield. Field reports from the knightly orders are more direct, confirming its threat profile, capable of tearing the fortified plate of a warrior like parchment. This is not hyperbole. We have the casualty logs to prove it. Compounding this offensive capability is a significant defensive anomaly. Its thick spinal coat of bony, interlocking plates neutralizes kinetic and slashing attacks, including chainsword strikes. When its flesh is finally pierced, it bleeds a viscous jet-black fluid and ichor that speaks to an unnatural and corrupted origin. The existence of such a creature is not a random mutation, it is an engineered blasphemy. Such a beast is not born, it is forged. The critical question is no longer what this is, but for what purpose it was created, and more importantly, by whom. The rot of the galaxy manifests in myriad forms. On supposedly placid worlds, it festers in the flesh of the fauna itself. We present case study 1V, the Juggernaut lizard, a 3-meter engine of aggression, a fortress of muscle and scale. Its threat profile is absolute. Observe the chimeric anomaly. Distended, milky blue eyes weeping a filmy mucus, a signature of unnatural influence. The frontal threat is constant. Warped fangs prevent its mouth from ever closing. Its rear is armed with a sweeping bludgeon tail scabbed with vicious spines, eliminating any safe angle of approach. Initial encounter notes from the world's knightly orders were costly and clear. Impervious to multi-angle spear thrusts, neutralized only by downward cranial strikes. A brutal, but necessary, lesson. The beast itself is a simple, if lethal, problem. The true heresy is its origin. This specimen's genetic makeup is not native to the world on which it was found. This is not evolution, it is a weapon, engineered and deployed. The question, therefore, is not what it is, but who made it, and how many more there are. The architecture of nightmares is not a product of natural evolution, it is an imposition. This diagnostic synthesis, compiled from the bestiary of Caliban, presents a pattern of deliberate, malicious creation. Examine the subjects. The Calibanite Lion, a thing of legend, whose very blood is a corrosive acid. The spined bear, a blasphemous fusion of flesh and rock, its armored spine coat deflecting blades while its jet-black blood poisons the very soil. The winged terror, a creature of contradictory phyla reptilian and avian with serpentine flesh that writhes long after death. Each beast is a biological paradox, a weaponized monster perfectly suited to its bloody purpose. The final key insight is the most damning. Magos Biologis analysis confirms zero biological overlap. They are not cousins in monstrosity, divergent branches from a common horrific ancestor. They are each a singular nightmare. This is not the hand of a single, galaxy-spanning intelligence. The evidence points to a more insidious source, the planet itself. Caliban was saturated with the energies of the Imperium. These beasts are not a seeded invasion. They are the world's own festering soul-given flesh, a chaotic and spontaneous eruption of warp-tainted life. The question is not who is seeding them, but what it is about this world that gives birth to such unique and multifaceted horror. The great beasts of Caliban were not merely fauna, they were living heresies, anomalies of evolution tainted by the near presence of the Imperium. Each was a species unto itself, an apex so absolute it became a curse. Our archival analysis identifies this as a self-perpetuating cycle of damnation, a pathology of the anomaly. It begins with absolute solitude, unrivaled, unchallenged, and utterly alone. This total isolation breeds a profound madness, a biological insanity that curdles the very soul. Primarch Lion El'Jonson himself observed this firsthand. His words, recorded for the Legion's edification.
Can you imagine what it must be like to be so singular a creature? To go through life knowing that you are alone and that there will never be any more of you. The beasts were not just driven by hunger, they were insane.
This derangement, in turn, fuels malicious predation. The creatures lash out not to feed, but to destroy. Their violence is an expression of their broken minds, a war against all other life which reinforces their solitude and perpetuates the cycle until death. The lion mastered the art of hunting such anomalies. He learned to recognize this pattern of self-destruction. But the great forests held more than one kind of beast, and the most dangerous insanity was not that born in a monster's heart. On the benighted colony worlds severed from Terra's light, evolution was a brutal arms race. The crucible of these planets did not forge statesmen or philosophers, it forged killers. This record details the genesis of that necessity. The fauna of these worlds were nightmares given form. Archival data logs them as the biological threat, a classification that borders on understatement. Beasts armored in geological, rock hide, impervious to conventional arms. Predators with saber fangs that tore through plasteel barricades. Worms whose very acidic blood was a weapon, melting armor and flesh into a hissing slurry. Against this unending tide of lethality, the stranded colonists had one choice: adapt or perish. From fragmented STC templates and sheer desperation, they engineered human counter-technology. To sunder the rock hide, they devised explosive bolts, delivering miniaturized detonations to breach the impenetrable carapaces. To meet the charge of saber-fanged monstrosities, they perfected motorized chainswords, their tearing teeth a definitive answer to fang and claw. And to survive the acidic spray of a slain foe, they constructed suits of primitive power armor, the first bulwarks that would elevate a man into a walking bastion. This was no mere technological development, it was a cultural catalyst, forging a warrior caste from the grim reality of survival. These proto-knights, clad in their primitive armor and armed with chain and bolt, became the saviors and rulers of their worlds. Yet, even as they mastered the slaughter of megafauna, a greater challenge was stirring in the dark. One that a single warrior, no matter how well armed, could not face alone. Imperial xenobiology cannot classify this threat. Logisticians of the Adeptus Terra designate it a species of one, a term of ignorance for a foe that defies all natural law. Every sample presents a chaotic fusion of phyla, organs arranged in blasphemous mockery of the divine human form. Their blood is acidic, their very presence an aura of decay, pointing to an unnatural genesis. Long before our crusade reached these blighted stars, a warning was recorded. The diminutive, green-robed figures who haunted the deep woods, known only as the Watchers in the Dark, offered a rare and chilling prophecy to the Knights of the Order. They pointed to the corpse of a slain beast and whispered a single fragmented warning: "This is but a shadow, the true beast hunts within." This was not a biological classification, but a spiritual one. The existence of these creatures implies a source, a focal point of damnation, from which this physical heresy bleeds into the Imperium. Before there was a legion, there was a world of shadow and death. Before the lion, there were beasts. This data slate, designated the Crucible of the Dark Angels, details the violent genesis of the First Legion. Attend. The forests of the death world Caliban were not merely woods, they were nightmares given form, teeming with warp-tainted megafauna. For the human inhabitants, survival was a constant war. Nightly orders arose, their entire culture predicated on hunting these abominations. A decade-long crusade was launched to cleanse the world, and they were successful. The last beast was slain. But their victory was hollow. With the monsters gone, the knights' purpose evaporated. Their martial prowess, forged in the hunt, turned inward, sparking existential crisis and civil strife. The crusade against the beasts had been a perfect, unintentional crucible. It bred a generation of warriors so disciplined, so utterly dedicated to the kill, that they were primed to become the Emperor's instrument of judgment, the First Legion. Thus, we conclude our audit. The ultimate heresy is not always overt. Sometimes it is born from noble purpose. To achieve peace, the Knights of Caliban rendered their culture obsolete, creating a vacuum that bred only conflict. They scoured their world of monsters, only to find the capacity for monstrosity now resided within themselves. Thought for the day.
A fortress unbreached is a fortress untested.
This inquisitorial review is concluded. Subscribe to these archives, and in the comments below, report what heresy you believe requires auditing next.